What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boys over here at Three Man Weave. I'm your co-host CJ, here with my lovely co-host ZD. On this Wednesday, October
Yes, sir.
1st, we're getting there, boys. Basketball season's approaching, 20 days
It's
away.
almost that
The
time.
countdown has already started, but now it's getting shorter, and you know, uh, kind of go or previewing some of the things we have. We're gonna be covering a lot of the media day coverage that was going on the day that we had recorded on Monday. That everyone finished off majority of their media day that night, and then we're also going to be talking about we're wrapping up almost off-season files. We're getting towards the bottom of the list, and this episode we're going to be talking about the Utah Jazz. So big
Sir.
things, and how are you doing tonight, ZD? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm above ground, brother. I think, I had a pretty good day. I was telling you I was going through the media day and trying to prepare and do all this, but yeah, I had a pretty good day. I'm just ready to go upstairs and think about some hoops. I think we've been talking about some basketball for the last hour. Excited to bring you guys the information and then get on out of here, watch some playoff baseball, study some more hoops, and yeah, bro. But I'm feeling good, man. I think this is always good to come on here and chop it up. And I think the season is right around the corner. So, I mean, you got to be excited about that. So I can't complain, man. I can't complain. But how you doing, bro?
I'm
How you
doing
feeling?
doing good, bro. Doing good. Kind of told you what was going on with work and stuff. Vince Young is heading to my work today, so I was able to get my Vince Young jersey signed. So that was a cool moment for me, and it's uh it's gonna be dope because I feel like I don't have like memorabilia like that. Obviously I've gotten things signed before, but not an athlete that jersey that I have. I've gotten like a signature off in a paper or something like that, but never like having a jersey with that person signing that jersey. So it's cool for me. I want to frame it eventually whenever I get the money to do that because I know it's a little expensive, but just trying to get stuff like that. I feel like it's you know people were like, "Oh, hey, Vince Young's gonna be here." And they're like, "Who's that?" And it kind of just blows my mind because obviously we're in Texas. He's a Texas legend, and I wasn't even living
Texas
here
football legend, bro.
whenever I was happened in '05. I was still in Vegas at the time, and everyone was a USC fan because they were the hot the cool kids on the block, coming off of a back-to-back championship, trying to three-peat, and I had ties, family being in Texas, so I had to rep them, and it's just crazy, bro. I feel like sports is such a huge part of our lives. Obviously, we're doing this podcast, and it kind of blows my mind sometimes that just people aren't, they just don't care about it, So it was very intriguing for me, but besides that,
Yeah, it's
bro,
humbling.
doing good, ready to, we were chopping it up, like you said, a little bit, an hour now, about just hoops in general, media day and everything. And it's very interesting. A lot of the stuff that, we're going to go over, just seeing everyone's perspective and, some breaking news that, we find out. It's interesting, man. Just kind of like, we've
Yeah.
been saying it for pretty much this whole off season, just ready for the season to start. And, super excited to get into it, bro. So that's doing
Yeah.
doing good, bro. Doing great.
Yeah, brother. That's good, man. It's good to hear. Man, we got something from Shams yesterday or the other. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was over the last 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
but we seen that Jonathan Kuminga finally re-signed, and I think that's it's pretty big breaking news if you ask me,
I
just
agree.
because of the stalemate they were in over the last 3 months or so, and I think it's good. It's a $48 million contract. I think it's over 2 years, so I mean it's 24 million a year. It's not too far off what we were saying the range was going to be from what I could grasp from the Warriors media day, very high vibes. I don't think Stephen Curry, Jimmy Butler, Kuminga, Draymond Green. There was really no drama that was going on there. Stephen Curry was asked a little bit about retirement, and he said, you're not getting that. So I think everybody there looked ready to compete. I was telling CJ this, but they asked Jimmy Butler, how did it feel to come to the Warriors and have immediate success? Second half of the season, the Warriors were one of the best teams in the NBA, having like a 16-3 record over a course of like a 20 game span. I think it was like 17-4 at one point. And he gave a really good, insightful answer. I think it's tough to be Jimmy Butler and the way that he left the Heat, like it was a pretty drama surrounded situation. But he mentioned that playing with Steph and being around somebody that great, is going to bring out the greatness in him. He mentioned that he had a really good offseason, working out with Steph and Draymond and getting closer to those guys. So it seemed like the chemistry was gelling pretty well. I mentioned to CJ that they also didn't grill Kuminga too much. They asked him, about his championship pedigree and how it feels to be back. And I think, I didn't want to bring this point up before we start going through some of the teams, but it is interesting to see, as we go across the teams here, just the different questions that were asked and kind of the media differences. I think I spoke to CJ about this, but each team is in a different region of the country, and everybody's media is different. So if you ask stupid questions, you get stupid answers, and if you ask good questions, you get good answers. So I feel like the Warriors media was very on par and handled the situation properly. I think you guys will see some of the other teams had a little bit more fire going on, but from what I could grasp from the Warriors situation, it seems like people are ready for the season to start and they're ready to compete for a championship. As long as Stephen Curry's healthy, I think everybody in the Warriors building believes that they have a chance to win an NBA title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, yeah, it's we were talking about it obviously, and the fact that I'm happy that he didn't really get grilled for it, rightfully so, because like I feel like it wasn't like he was when it happened, whenever the whole contract conversations were going on, maybe been a little awkward or tension in the building,
Yeah,
but the reason why he wanted to do it wasn't like, oh, I just want to leave Golden State. It's just he felt like he wasn't getting the opportunities, and I feel like he was trying to weigh out his options, see what he's worth, how much value he holds in this league, and I feel like that's a main thing that we've been talking about. A lot of players are trying to do that because this player is worth this much, this player is worth this. Well, if this player is getting paid X amount of dollars, I can be on that same caliber. I'm just not getting the playing time and the opportunities. So, glad they didn't do that, and I rightfully so. I feel like you were saying, a lot of the media, especially for them, they've been winning. They have good chemistry with Steph and Draymond and Steve. So it's kind of like they're on good footing with them. So I feel like that wouldn't have been a issue, but if it was,
yeah.
then we would have been talking about it. But
Oh yeah, for sure. You
it's
would have heard about it.
yeah, I was about to say, but yeah, it's interesting, kind of like you were giving me the rundown of all the media days, and I feel like that is a great point. It really depends on how good that media is for that team. Depending on the type of answers they're looking for, if they're trying to get headlines and trying to get clicks
Yeah, right.
for their team or for their media.
Clicks.
But yeah, no, yeah, it's interesting, man. I feel like they're in like you said, anytime you have Steph Curry, healthy on your roster, the Warriors are feeling like they always have a
Yeah,
chance
they're
to
gonna
make a
compete.
championship. So
Yeah, bro, and Kaminga being back just gives them more firepower. And we said it, if he's on the roster, they're going to be a lot better. I think Dunleavy was willing to approach the apron on this one and figure it out on the back end. I think he has a team option the second year, so he'll renegotiate at some point. We will be talking about this again next year. But the Warriors are excited to finally get the season rolling. But going out east, man, Milwaukee, Giannis versus the Bucks right now. I think Wes Eden's the co-owner. When I was going through the clips, it was funny. This one really stuck out to me. Wes Edens is co-owner of the Milwaukee Bucks. He was asked a really interesting question. Did he feel like Giannis was going to be staying in Milwaukee? And he said that he had a conversation with Giannis about staying in Milwaukee, and he confirmed that he would, and that he was loyal to the team, and that he was excited to be here. When Giannis was asked about that same thing, he said that he couldn't recall the conversation, and I think that sums up how the Bucks media day went. We spoke about them on the offseason files and how we struggled to come up with the three core players that they're building around because we didn't really see the direction of where this team was headed. Giannis did touch on the fact that he enjoyed the Miles Turner signing, and they've worked out a few times so far, but the fact that he couldn't recall a key conversation about a contract extension or being loyal to the team, right, was very eye popping to me. Once again, the Bucks are in no position to lose a player of that caliber. They don't have anybody who could replace. I mean, nobody does, but They definitely don't. They don't have anybody who could step up and fill that role. So I think it was interesting to hear some of the answers from Milwaukee. Bobby Portis was asked a couple interesting questions about what he thinks he's going to be able to do now that he's going to be in the starting lineup. I think that's clear. And, he said that he's always played the same way with a dog mentality. We know Bobby Portis is from Arkansas. So I was able to, I think there's some players on the Bucks that really do believe that they can compete, and Giannis is definitely one of them. And then I also think that there's some players who are just lacking development and who need a little bit more time and experience, and they'll gain that through the reps during the season. But that's a scary thing if you're a Bucks fan, no doubt. That was my first thought. I know CJ asked me that question off the pod, but yeah, if I'm a Bucks fan, I'm not, like, when I see that quote, I'm not too excited. I think that rings a potential chance for Giannis to end up leaving. And I didn't like that. I think he had an opportunity to put some water on the fire, and he decided not to. He kind of poured some more gasoline on it, if you wanted to say so. He could have just passed on the question or said, like, I don't recall, but, just went with it. But I think he decided on what he decided on. And you said it, like, you don't really know who's telling the truth now. And I think that's very awkward. So Bucks are kind of in an awkward situation at the moment. With Dame's departure, it's been tough for them to figure out what they're going to do next. So hopefully their season ends up going well. But from what I could grasp, there's a lot of confusion in Milwaukee.
Yeah. It's when you told me about that and I read it on the outline, it made me question. It's like, man, like, where, if that's the case, if your franchise player doesn't recall having a conversation with your co-owner talking about his future and if he's going to be with the franchise for however long, it's very like you said, eye popping. It's like, what is, where are we at? Like, what is the plan? You know what I mean? Because like you said, after the Dame departure, that ended up not working out. You lost Brook Lopez. You lost key pieces that were on that championship team. It's kind of like, what's the direction of your team now? Obviously, you have Giannis, so wherever he ends up doing for the season, we know he's going to have a great year. But it's like, what else? Who else on this roster is going to contribute to winning basketball? And I feel like that's the question mark that we've had really this whole past year, and it's going into this year. So, and the fact that you don't really know if he's wanting to stay here, it's worrisome for Bucks fans, like you said. It's kind of like, what is our future looking like? Where are we gonna go?
And they asked Kuzma, do you feel like you're getting settled in? And he said he really struggled last year to feel like he was a part of the team. He said the cold weather was tough. Washington he was used to how that team was playing and his role there. And he mentioned that it's been tough for him, to come over and be effective. And he knows that, and he's counting on himself to be better. So good answer from Kuzma. But yeah, bro, like, just a little bit of confusion out there. Milwaukee, hopefully you guys can end up, saving this core and figuring out what you guys are going to do with Giannis. And we're wishing you a good season. But yeah, we're going out west again. We're going to go to a place that we all know and love in Texas, is Houston, baby. And Houston does not have a problem. We've seen that Kevin Durant was asked about his extension. And, unlike Giannis, he actually said that he is loyal to Houston and he's committed. He was talking about Rafael Stone, the Rockets owner, and he said that he had a conversation with him about having an extension. I was thinking the deal might get done a little bit sooner, but he alluded to the fact that they were going to renegotiate after this season. So Kevin Durant should be a Houston Rocket for, I would argue, maybe the rest of his career. We will see, depending on how Houston does. Now that they lost Fred VanVleet as well, we'll see how that impacts their playoff seeding. Ime Udoka was asked about that too, for people who are concerned about Fred VanVleet. Ime Udoka mentioned that he said he feels for Fred. He's torn his ACL twice as well, so he understands what he's going through. I think Houston will still be competitive in the West. I think in this media day, the most important thing for me that I was seeing is just Durant's answers, and I was able to go through his video. And again, first question out the gate was asking about the extension, and for him to give that answer with that type of confidence, I think it gave me reassurance that the Houston Rockets are in a great place. We spoke about them on Three Man Weave. We've confirmed that with the offseason file, but obviously hearing Kevin Durant speak about his time here has been good. I think that gave me an inside look into how he's feeling so far. So good things are happening in Houston. Like I mentioned earlier, they don't have a problem.
Yeah, no, the fact that I feel like that's always the question, right? Whenever you have a player come over with a year left on his contract, kind of
Right.
where are they going to be? Like you said, not the situation that the Bucks are in. KD is saying he wants to stay in Houston. He believes in everything that's going on. So great sign for them. Obviously, expectations for them come into the year already super high when you get the player of KD's caliber, plus the year that they just had without that type of player on their team. So it's great. It's great to see that because I feel like that was, it's always something obviously it was the first question they asked him on media day. So it's kind of
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
question coming into the year after he got, on the Houston Rockets, kind of where are you, what are you feeling about this team? Like, do you want to be here for the rest of your career, or is it just like a 1 year stop? But like you said, I think the fact that he said that is just great signs for them and what they already have building. Obviously, Amen Thompson's coming into his third year, coming off of
Yeah.
a first team all defense. Sengun had a great Euros. He had a great year as well, first time All
He was asked
Star.
about
So,
that.
so it's
Yeah.
it's great, man. It's great to see that they're not in the situation that the Bucks are in. They know
Yeah.
who's going to be on the roster. They know the type
Yeah.
of players that are going to be here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, bro. And I think Reed Shepard, Armin Thompson, those are the two X factors for them. They were asked a couple good questions, but they seem really excited to step into an expanded role finally. I think us fans have been waiting for Reed Shepard to get that opportunity. We know with this injury to Fred VanVleet that he's going to get that opportunity. So very excited to see what Houston can do. I think they're going to be top two probably in the West. I think behind the Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see if that prediction ends up being right. But Houston, you guys, salute to you guys. But let's go out to Dallas, man. Let's stay in Texas. Jason Kidd, I think he was on record talking about Kyrie Irving's injury, and we know Dallas is dealing with some injuries right now. Cooper Flag, they ended up winning the flag race, so they are excited to have that man in the building. We know that, but Jason Kidd was asked about Kyrie Irving's injury, and he responded with, he's ahead of schedule. That's good news. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, especially if you're a Kyrie Irving fan. We know what he brings to the game, and for the Mavericks, they need him in the lineup. There's really, I don't see a way for this team to be competitive without Kyrie. So it's just, I think he was Kid, that is, he was alluding to the fact that he's ahead of schedule, but there doesn't need to be weekly updates on Kyrie Irving's injury. I mean, it is an ACL tear, so it's going to take a little bit of a long time to heal, and that's okay. I think we also saw Anthony Davis break the news that unfortunately he has to wear the protective eyewear for the rest of his career due to the retina surgery that he had in the offseason. Those two players, Kyrie spoke to his injury as well. He said that he aligned his words with Jason Kidd's. He's right on schedule. He brought up the fact of Anthony Davis's timeline and how AD needs him. Kyrie said that he knows what he can bring to the table will benefit Anthony Davis, and Anthony Davis gave a similar response. But I think AD has been put in a tough situation to play through so many injuries. Now seeing this, it definitely is going to have an impact on him. He said he's going to have to go Wilt Cream goggles for the rest of his career. So, unfortunately, AD's a warrior for sure, but he's been dealing with some injuries too. But he's going to be healthy for Game 1. We know him and Cooper Flag will be in the lineup, and then of course Cooper Flag. I think that was the hype that surrounded Dallas's media day. Cooper Flag just answering questions finally, and he was asked about. I think he met MJ at the Ryder Cup. He was just asked about the expectations that he had for himself, and honestly, he said that he wants to impact the game in a lot of different ways. Everybody spoke very highly. I don't know if you saw Klay Thompson said that he never misses a single drill. He's always going hard every single time, going game speed. I think everybody in their entire organization speaks really highly of Cooper Flag, and he speaks highly of himself. So got a lot of good stuff from Dallas, even though they are injured, with AD and Kyrie Irving. AD is going to be in the lineup, but we know the injury history that he has. I just got a lot of good vibes from them. So Yeah, I mean, you can't complain if you're a Dallas fan. Of course, getting Cooper Flag was really the talk of the summer for you guys. So hopefully you guys enjoy that pick. And, us over here at Three Man Weave, we think he's going to win Rookie of the Year, no doubt.
Yeah, no, I agree, bro. It's in a situation right now with Kyrie obviously being out is going to be a situation that they're gonna have to figure out who's going to be able to take those main ball handler facilitator duties, and with the player of Cooper Flag's abilities, he might be getting some of those touches, so it might progress his abilities further, ahead of the timeline. But of course, when you don't have Kyrie, it kind of puts you in a situation where, it's going to be interesting to see how well they do, I guess. Obviously, I don't think they're going to be contending and whatnot right at this very moment. But whenever he comes back, then it's a whole different story. And obviously, with the progression of Cooper Flag and AD being on that roster as well, him having the goggles, it kind of gave me
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it, but they said him wearing goggles right now, and then him they also have a rookie that's wearing number 32. The last time that was a thing was with the Lakers, so maybe they got
Hmm.
something cooking up over there that we don't know. But
Yeah.
it's like one of
Agreed.
those things, man. It's getting Cooper Flag, being able to win the flag race is such a huge thing for the Mavs, and after everything they went through, it's gonna be interesting to see the way that their season ends up looking, bro. I'm excited. Can't
Yeah.
wait. I always bring it up. I'm not a Mavs
Very
fan,
positive.
but I appreciate basketball and the fact that they have 3 number 1 picks on their roster. Something that's I've never seen
Yeah.
before. It's gonna be interesting, but I'm excited, bro. I think it's like you said, vibes are good in Dallas, and once Kyrie gets back, I feel like that's really when we're gonna see their full potential. Up until that point, it's
Yeah.
gonna see the how Cooper Flag can be and the player of his abilities, and him and AD, seeing how that duo is looking without a main point guard. So I'm excited, bro. I
Yeah.
saw Derek Lively as well, like grew like another 2 inches or something. I think he's like 7'3". So that was a player last year we really didn't get to see play that much, but heading into this year, it's that's kind of why, I wouldn't say why, but AD gonna be able to play the 4 spot where his main position, and then having an actual center there. I feel like that's gonna be good for him because he's not gonna be taking as much as a beating in the paint as he would in the center spot, and having him be his true position. I would say he's more so a power forward center opposed to a center power forward. So it's gonna
Exactly.
be a cool pairing that we're gonna be able to see in Dallas, and I think that they're in a they're not in the greatest spot, but they're not in a terrible spot either. They're kind of like in the middle of, like, obviously
Yeah,
sucks not
bro.
having Kyrie, but whenever he comes back, that's what I'm gonna be excited to see the most.
Yeah, bro, and they needed these vibes after trading away Luka Doncic, right? And then Michael Parsons, like Dallas has just kind of there's been a cloud over Dallas a little bit. So it's a good thing to see positive vibes over there in our home state. So let's go out east, man. Man, Cleveland Cavaliers, baby. There's been some injuries over there too. Darius Garland with a turf toe had surgery on it in June. He replied that he's back to doing full contact and doing everything, so that's good for them. I don't know if he'll be there game one. If he does, that's good. I think he said he's on track to play, but he may not, so we'll have to see. Max Strus also came in a walking boot and was, I guess, he had surgery on a Jones fracture that he got over the summer while working out, so he's going to be out 3 to 4 months. That puts some damage in their depth a little bit. But the Cleveland Cavaliers are a very interesting one. We haven't been speaking about them a ton, just really since their offseason file. We haven't been bringing up a lot of their stuff. But Donovan Mitchell said that he was ready for this year. Evan Mobley spoke to the fact that now that they do have some injuries, he's going to look to step up in terms of the offensive duties and be able to carry those with Donovan Mitchell. Lonzo Ball also said that he's feeling the best that he's felt in the last 4 to 5 years. He's still not going to play back to backs, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are in I would say they're one of the teams that have probably the most to prove out of any team in the NBA, just based off of their playoff exits. But a lot of high vibes in Cleveland. I couldn't really get a grasp on how they were feeling about contending for a title. Seemed to me like they were just trying to weather the storm of all the injuries that recently popped up, and that they lost Ty Jerome, which is going to hurt their bench. But I mean, bringing in Lonzo Ball, right? They have some depth there. We know DeAndre Hunter is really good, probably going to be in the sixth man of the year race. And Donovan Mitchell's just such a all NBA caliber player. I think Cleveland is one of the better teams that we have in the NBA. And again, as long as they can weather the storm of their injuries, it was clear to me that their guys' vibes were still pretty high as well. So shout out to Cleveland. Hopefully you guys have a good season. And I know we haven't talked about the Cavaliers much since the offseason file, but it was good to go back and see how they're doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's I feel like that's something that they've always dealt with, bro, is the injuries, and whenever they are fully healthy, it's always the not living up to the expectation in the playoffs. So I feel like obviously it sucks heading into the season. You're not going to have your full healthy roster, but hopefully that can be beneficial for them because it's going to prepare them for if that happens further along in the year. I feel like that's something that whenever healthy, we've seen what they can be. Obviously, number one seed last year and always a really good basketball team. It's just injuries, man. I feel like Darius Garland has been injured for pretty
I
much these past
know
two,
the
3 seasons. The
eye,
eye,
yeah,
yeah. Now that, like you said, the turf toe. Obviously, the Max Struess one. Like you said, it's interesting seeing media days. It kind of brings us into perspective of how they're doing, how their off season was, and it also shows if someone's injured or if they're recovering from the surgery. And the Max Struess one, that was news to me as well, and I feel like that's gonna, like you said, gonna put a damper on their depth that they've had and what we correlate the Cavs with is being so deep in on their bench. And obviously him being out, losing Ty Jerome, it's gonna be like you said, I think it's Evan Mobley's gonna be his year to really step up on the offensive
that
side, and
bubbling,
I
yeah.
think he kind of showed us that he can do that last year. So I think it's something that obviously you don't want to see injuries ever, but it might help him progress his offensive ability for the later on in the season, and seeing what he can be, potentially being obviously the second scorer, or even on some days the first, depending on their matchups. But I feel like you said,
Oh
we
yeah,
we know what to expect from Spider, bro. I feel like he's proven to us that he's one of the best players in this league year in and year out, and I feel like with the injuries, it's just gonna obviously be something they're gonna have to deal with at the beginning of the season, but it might help them towards the end of the year because being able to fully get healthy, DG, Max Struess, those guys,
yeah.
they're gonna come back with a fire underneath them. Depending on where they're at, they might have to just kind of get in where they fit in, and I feel like they're the perfect team to do that. They're gonna be good on the defensive side of the ball. It's just gonna be who's gonna be helping Donovan Mitchell on the offensive side, and I think Evan Mobley is their guy. I feel like that's the fact that he said that in his
That's
media
who they
day.
got.
It's their
That's
their
who they
one.
going with, bro. He needs to step up and show, like, even if guys are down, he can still be effective, and I think he will. Reigning defensive player of the year, and I think there's good vibes in Cleveland even with the injuries. So hopefully Lonzo Ball has a healthy year. We know Donovan Mitchell is going to be competing, like you said, and I think Cleveland's going to be a top 3 seed in the East. Will they be able to win a championship? That's the question that's yet to be answered. So
Mm-hmm.
we will see. But let's go out west, man. Let's go to. I hate this team, but let's talk about the Clippers. They're dealing with an ongoing investigation right now. We know that. One of their head executives, Lawrence Frank, gave a statement at the media day. He's asked by Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, did Dennis Robertson, who's Kawhi Leonard's uncle, ever ask the Clippers for, gifts, money, things that are not permissible under the NBA's ruling? And Lawrence Frank gave a peculiar answer, and I want to give some context into the situation. Steve Ballmer was asked a similar situation when this first, or a similar question when this first came out, and the answer that Steve Ballmer gave was the exact same answer that Lawrence Frank gave. Lawrence Frank responded with, "We know the rules. Kawhi knows the rules. Steve knows the rules. I know the rules, and the Clippers know the rules." That doesn't exactly answer the question that Miss Shelburne asked. I think they're figuring out every way to dodge potential questions to talk about the ongoing investigation. We know if you're in Los Angeles, the media there, like CJ alluded to earlier, it's going to be a little bit different than, say, Orlando's media. They're going to try to grill you and get headlines. I think it was interesting to see the gymnastics that they were doing around certain questions. Kawhi was later asked the same exact question, and he just said, "I understand, the full contract and the terms, and I do not think that anything happened that was out of bounds in the contract." And it was interesting because I don't know if you remember this, CJ, but Pablo Torre broke that there wasn't really any terms for him to be getting the money. Like if he was going to be doing advertisement, like where's the advertisements that you did, right? So I think the Clippers are in some hot water. Everybody who was asked questions about the investigation, Lawrence Frank, Kawhi Leonard, I think James Harden even was asked a little bit about it, but they all said that they invite the investigation. So they're willing to let the NBA investigate. They're probably confident that they won't find anything, but I just think this situation's so childish, and we know the rules. It's like, yeah, I know the rules of not taking the cookie out of the cookie jar, but did you do it?
Right.
Are you still guilty?
Right.
I think Adam Silver is going to be forced to prove the Clippers' innocence, and we came on 3-Man. We even talked about it, but he wants to protect the players and, of course, the teams and the reputation, and he doesn't want to hurt anybody's pockets. So he doesn't want to impose any ban or any restrictions on what the Clippers can do with their draft or what they can do in terms of signing players. And he doesn't want to find that they were in violation of the league's policy in terms of the contract, right? And if the NBA ends up finding any wrongdoing with that, then I think there's going to be a lot of issues, because you can't – salary circumvention is not something we hear about a lot, but it's one of the most dangerous things you can do in the NBA, just because of, we brought up the restrictions on a past podcast, but the loss of the draft picks, the inability to sign players, and potentially a loss of the player that you signed, it just makes the contract void. So you can't risk that. I think the Clippers are doing gymnastics around the questions surrounding the investigation the entire time, and that's kind of what I expected. Very LA Clippers. Like I said, it's definitely not one of my favorite teams, but I think they're inviting the investigation because they have to. They don't want to be seen as guilty, but they look a little guilty.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those, like, if you weren't guilty, you probably would just say that, no, yeah, we're not guilty. But like you said, they're having to do gymnastics around the question, and obviously this was, I'm assuming they expected that question to be asked throughout the whole media day, as they should. I mean, that's what's going on. That was really the news of this past month when that broke, and it's a very strange situation, something I've never seen personally. You're pretty sure you've never seen it either, with a team doing this as of late, at least. They might have been, in before our time, but it's kind of hard to really, like, have your right answer or where you stand, because you don't want to say that you are guilty, because obviously that's just going to bring more problems to your franchise. But at the same time, you don't want to say you're not if you are. So it's kind of hard. Like, I think they did a decent job, right? Because there's not really much they could have done differently. But it just sucks that they're in that situation, and it's something that they're going to have to deal with, and it's probably gonna be something we really won't see until maybe in the middle of the season.
3-4 months later.
Yeah,
right.
So it's gonna be interesting to see what comes of this.
Super sketchy.
Like you said, that was really all that their media day was, talking about that. I'm pretty sure
much.
There's nothing, obviously their team is good. I mean, if we want to talk about that
they talked to Beal and I saw, that's a good point. They asked Beal about how he felt being in LA, and he said he's ready to go, and he said, I think his exact quote was mentally clear, which is, haven't heard that, but it makes sense. I mean, coming from Phoenix and that dumpster fire that was there, I mean, you have to give him credit for figuring out a way to get to a competitive team like the Clippers. And they asked James Harden about his All-NBA performance or All-NBA season last year, and he said he feels like he can replicate it and exceed it. And He's ready to lead the team and prove that the Clippers are real title contenders. So I think outside of the ongoing investigation, the vibes surrounding their actual team are high.
Mhm.
I think they believe they can compete and be a top 4 or 5 seed in the Western Conference, which is a bloodbath. So give credit to the Clippers, but hey, I'm not a fan, bro. And
Yeah.
this investigation, I don't know. It does not look too good for them, for sure. It doesn't look too pretty. But let's go to the other LA team, baby. My LA Lakers, man. And the sun is shining in LA. LeBron's excited to be with the Lakers. We know that. He's not retiring for now. Um, or is he? Maybe. We don't know. I think he was asked flat out one of the first questions, you see yourself retiring over the next year or two? And he said maybe. So he's leaving that door open. I mean, we know the end of the horizon is near, you could say, right? I think the most interesting question he was asked though was two questions about timelines for different people, but he was asked about Luka Doncic, and somebody said that Luka's a great player. We know he was traded because you guys had Anthony Davis on the roster. Do you feel that Luka Doncic being here extends your timeline? And he answered like, no, I don't, I'm Luka Doncic is a great player, but he doesn't impact my decision at all. The way that I feel in my family is who impacts that decision. And then they asked about his family, who said, Bryce James is going to be coming up in the NBA. Do you feel like he impacts your timeline? And he said, no, absolutely not. Bryce is young. I'm 40 something. Like he's nowhere near on my timeline, so I'm not concerned with that. And I thought that was interesting. Coming from LeBron and just hearing his mentality on where he sits, kind of at the peak of his career, and really he hasn't slowed down. I'm not even going to say that he's really not slowing down. He's still averaging 25, 7, and 6 or whatever. But I can tell that he feels that the end is near. He's just trying to ride this one out and see how competitive we can be alongside Luka Doncic. Luka came in with a overjoyed attitude and sat down, was cracking jokes with them, and was like, "I missed you guys." And he seemed a lot more happy, which was good, bro. I think they asked some questions about how his performance was for Slovenia and Eurobasket. We know he was one of the best players there, maybe the best player in the tournament, getting like 30 points. Mind you, they got 10-minute quarters, only 40 minutes in that game. So he was getting NBA numbers in a 40-minute game. And then just his health, right? I think he was asked a question about his transformation. We've been talking about Luka's body this entire summer, kind of weird. But, I told you I'm not buying into that until I see it on the court. But he did give a really great answer, and it aligns with what JJ Redick said. He said, all of us are in championship shape. And I said that on the podcast, if we're not going to be in championship shape, how can we win a championship? Guys are going out there getting gassed after 5 minutes of playing hard. And it's something that JJ Redick has continued to stress to the Lakers. We also haven't talked about this. He got an extension. He was asked about that. And I loved his answer. He said that he was committed to the Lakers and he always had been, and playing with, or coaching LeBron, not playing with, sorry. Coaching LeBron, playing with LeBron. Man, I think JJ Redick's still a player,
Player,
dog.
yeah, it's
Come on,
crazy.
man.
Yeah.
Come on. But coaching LeBron James has been a blessing, and now that he has Luka Doncic, another generational talent, I mean, he felt like it was necessary to sign an extension. So I'm feeling great about how our media day went. Austin Reeves was asked a couple of good questions as well about just what he feels like, the type of player that he's become over the last couple of years, and how LeBron James has helped improve his career. And they asked him about the extension. He felt like he was comfortable in LA. He just has to see. He said that he's built his career here, so he doesn't really see himself in another jersey, quote, which was good to hear. Roy was also asked about his improvement in his jump shooting. He was asked about if he was going to shoot some more threes, and he said yes. So, Ayton looked good. Laravia's thing went well. Marcus Smart. I think we're fine, bro. Like, I'm excited about what the Lakers, are going to offer next year. I think I'm excited to see Luka and LeBron have that full season under their belt, and just I'm really excited to compete, man. We know the Western Conference is going to be a bloodbath, but great vibes in LA. I think LeBron had a few cryptic messages with the retirement, but outside of that, everybody else seemed really excited to go for the year.
Yeah, it's we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, and the fact that we are in those talks of, man, LeBron retiring, LeBron not being here, it's just kind of, it's crazy, bro. I mean, he ever since I've been watching the league, he's been in it, and I feel like that's how it's been for a lot of kids our age, kids younger than us. They don't know the NBA without him. So just thinking about that, man, it's gonna be a sad day whenever that happens. But as of right now, he's on the Lakers, and the fact that he's having it be a mystery, if you want to call it that, as if like this is if how many more years you have, and it's I feel like the way he's playing,
I like
he
it.
could play. He could
I don't
play
mind it.
for yeah. He could play for however long he wants to. But I think it's intriguing, man, because like I was always asking you the questions like what is y'all's future gonna look like? What are you gonna do whenever Braun isn't here? And I mean, obviously we got that answer, and it's Luca, and I feel like
Thank
it's a
God.
perfect situation for y'all to be in, and the fact that he is the player that he is, and coming off of Euros, seeing how he played, it just I bet you're in a great spot as a Lakers fan right now, bro.
Yeah, I'm
Because
feeling great.
I know that it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for you these past couple seasons, but you got your guy and you got your future, and I feel like that was always my question for you and the Lakers nation, and it's y'all's question y'all's y'all's question was answered in that regard, and
Exactly.
having that type of player, it's always it's kind of thinking, I think it was something that you always brought up and something I think of too. I'm wanting to see what y'all do look like with LeBron. Funny enough, like, what does that team look like? Who's going to be acquired? I know LA is a free agency destination, so y'all can get, an all-star, all NBA type player whenever he ends up deciding leaving or whenever he retires, that may be. And I think it's interesting, man. I'm ready to see what y'all look like, and see how AR is too. I feel like he's going to be, obviously took a huge step this past year in the right direction, being the type of player he is, and seeing what he can be with LeBron and Luca. I think it's y'all in a good spot, bro. I'm not a Lakers fan, but you being a Lakers fan, us talking about basketball so much, I'm starting to enjoy watching them play a
Hearing
lot
about them,
more, and
yeah, and
especially
seeing
getting
them.
Luca, having LeBron. Like, I've never seen those type of players on the same team
Nah,
before.
me
So
neither.
that being said, it's I think it's the fact that they said they're in championship shape, bro, is kind of your main question you had for them. And it's like, man, like, we're getting gas playing, first quarter, and we're not able to keep this up for the whole game. It's gonna
Yeah,
be interesting to see what they look like, bro. I'm excited to see the Lakers, bro. I'm ready.
yeah,
I'm
brother.
ready.
Of
I'm ready.
course. Yeah, dude. It was a. I loved going through there, so that was a fun little exercise for me. But we're still staying out in the West, bro. This is your team now. I was going through the Thunder's media day, and they're just looking to repeat, man. Shea was asked a couple questions about the MVP and the season he had last year, and he gave a cold answer. I'm focused on this year. Last year's last year. You can't get caught up in the past. I think it was his quote, and I love that,
I
man. I
like
think
that.
the determination from him has been part of the reason why the Thunder's organization has done so well. We saw J Dub also allude to the fact that he was asked, quote, "You guys are the defending NBA champions. How does it feel now that people are going to be going for you guys?" And he said, "We just have to go out there and prove why we won last year's championship. Defend our battle, stand our ground, prove that we're one of the best teams." I mean, he said it like in the NBA, but I'm thinking ever, to be honest with you. I think the Thunder are in one of the most unique situations behind Sam Presti's brilliance and obviously the players that they've been able to acquire through certain trades in the draft. They've done a great job of building their core. They have the probably the best core in the NBA right now. Shea, Chet, J Dub, everybody looks ready to go. I think the we spoke about some of the media and other teams stuff like that. I think the Thunder just have a really good organization from top down. I think every one of their reporters and the people in their building, their franchise cares a lot about winning basketball, and it was clear to me that they have their eyes set on a repeat. Caruso was saying that he feels like he needs another NBA ring, so He's like, why not get one this year? And I
Yeah.
like that. I think he had everybody laughing with that. So just to give you a little rundown of your squad, man, they feel confident they can repeat, and all your guys. I know whenever you go through their media days, but all those dudes are confident that they're ready to show what they can do and their improvements they made from this offseason. I think some dudes have some things to work on more than others, but they're right there with being one of the next. If not, they're already here as the next dynasty.
Mm.
But we'll have to see. I think this year will really determine the answer to that question. It's like if they're a dynasty or not. If they get back to the finals, they end up winning a championship, then they're for sure a dynasty, bro. There's really no way around that.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree, bro. I think it's that's my expectation too, bro. Obviously, I don't want to speak too much in the future because I didn't want to do that last year. But coming off this past season, seeing the team that we had and what they were able to accomplish, it's hard for me to not think that we're going to repeat again. Obviously, it's easy to say that looking back at it now, but even during the season, I had a good feeling, and I think coming into this year, I feel probably better about the situation we're in. Obviously, seeing where everyone's at, seeing the injuries that J Dub had to go through, injuries we had to go through as a roster. I think it
Yeah,
kind of
bro.
just
My
we're
goodness.
battle tested pretty much all year. And funny enough, we didn't have a healthy roster, and we were still the best team in
Mm-mm.
the league. So heading into this year, hopefully we could have a full healthy roster and see what that can be. And I think you brought it up with Shea, just his mentality. I feel like that's something, though the way he is the reason why we are so successful. I mean, you brought it up earlier. I think the fact that a lot of people could think about, oh, you just came off of all these accolades, MVP, Western Conference MVP, scoring champ, all this. It's like, what next? And it's just like, man, we're just focused on the future now. We're focusing on season. We're focused on getting back to that point, because I think that's where you're trying to get to. And when you already accomplish that, it's hard, not hard, but it's to really think about this upcoming season. A lot of people say like the championship hangover. Hopefully that, I don't think that's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with,
Nah.
just because we're the type of dudes we have on our team, and we're so young. I feel like, it's funny enough, it's like we're champs, but I feel like we still have a lot to prove to people. You know what I mean? Like we kind of displayed our dominance
Makes
for a
sense.
season. Can you replicate that? And I think that's the mentality coming to this upcoming season. And bro, yeah, no, vibes are as high as it'll ever be, bro. I talked to you about it. I've talked to the boys about it. The more that we're getting closer to the season, it's like, man, like we have a target on our back now. We're the defending
Oh yeah.
champions. Like we got to be able to stand our ground, and I've never had
Have
that
to.
feeling before. So it's a new feeling for me coming to this year. But man, like people have been asking me, y'all, you think Thunder are gonna go back? And I'm like, I have no real reason to think otherwise. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah, why
really.
would they not?
I know a lot of the teams in the West got better. I mean, it's always been a bloodbath for the past years, but I have no reason to think that we don't make it back to that mountaintop, bro. It's from seeing everyone's progression. We're only, if you think about it, that's the championship team that we had is the worst that we're gonna be at that point. And to
Yeah.
think that you're NBA champ, you being so young, coming to this upcoming season, it's high vibes for me, bro. I cannot complain, and
I'm about to
I
say
think that's another reason why I'm excited for the year. It's like,
cloud
man, we
nine.
have that target on our back now, bro. We're the top dog in the league, and we got to prove to everyone why we deserve to be in this point, and hopefully make it back, bro. So super excited, bro.
Yeah,
It's
brother.
vibes are high, bro.
Yeah, man. No, for sure. I love that, and hopefully they can. I've been, same goes to you. You said that about the Lakers. It's been a joy watching the Thunder. I know you're a diehard fan, and for me, just watching them, and obviously they're such a great team now.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love, watching the Thunder on any given night, and I really appreciate it. So staying in the West, though, man, we're going to Denver. I think the most important thing that I got from their media day was Nikola Jokic. You might have seen that headline. He confirmed that he wanted to stay as a Nugget for forever, quote unquote. He didn't say that he would resign though, so I thought that was kind of interesting. He said that he wanted to be a Nugget forever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to resign. I think the reigning Finals MVP made it clear though that he feels like his heart is in Denver. They have a really interesting situation brewing there. You know, with Cam Johnson coming in and Jamal Murray gave a couple interesting answers. You know, we know he hasn't made an All-Star team just yet, but could he make one this year? Well, you know, it's yet to be seen. I think Denver has a lot of interesting pieces there that they got to work out, you know, and try to figure out what Christian Brown's going to be in his role. And they really just got to figure out a way to make sure that Nikola Jokic is protected. I think Jonas Valanciunas being there is kind of the reason for that. But yeah, he did signal that he wanted to be in a Nuggets jersey, and I think that's if you're a Denver fan, you can't be mad at that. I think if you were going through their media day, you were probably looking for that question. You ended up getting it, and the answer you can't be too mad with. So that was the highlight for them. I mean, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, it's I think we just gotta see it. You know, he says that he
Yeah, we just
wants
got to see
to,
it.
but I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. Let's just say the season doesn't go as well as he think it does, or he doesn't get to where they're trying to, you know, work their way to get to. And I think it's interesting because like you said, he wants to be a Nugget forever, but he isn't talking about an extension. It kind of wouldn't be too worried, like you said, because obviously you're a man's word is his word, and hopefully he stays true to that. But I mean, things can happen, bro. I mean, an injury can happen, and
Yeah,
that
stuff
can
happens.
derail their season or this and that, and it might be looking a little different. But I'm not hoping that on anyone. I think Jokic hopefully will be a for lifer. I feel like that's something we don't see a lot in this era of basketball, and I think if he if they have a successful season, they make it to Western Conference Finals, whatever, even finals, whatever it may be. It's there's no reason for him to leave the Nuggets. I think what he's built, bringing their first championship, just says the type of player he is, and I don't really see him leaving. Honestly, I'm just kind of putting it in the
Nah,
air because I feel like that's something that you kind of have to in the landscape of the league
you got to
nowadays.
be realistic.
Yeah, and I think I don't see him leaving, but let's just say the season doesn't go as well as he think it does, and that's when that question will definitely start to be something in the back of my
Yeah,
head. But as of right now, like you said, there's no real reason for me to think he's going to leave. He gave his word, and with the roster they have, I mean, I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the West. So I think they're going to be competing, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. I mean, we know what Jokic is going to be. It's just what does Cam Johnson look like? Is Jamal Murray going to get this first All Star? Is Christian Brown, is he going to take that next leap in his career? And I think, like you said, having a backup center in Valanciunas, I think it's going to be something that we have never really seen from the Nuggets. So they're in a good spot, but you know, for me personally, as someone who's been watching hoops for these past couple years and analyzing it, that's something in the back of my head that we might circle back to by this time next year, or the end of
yeah, for
the
sure.
season. But yeah, I'm excited, bro. I think Jokic, I mean, best player in the world, arguably, and I think it's something that you as a Nuggets fan, like you said, you're happy that he wants to be on a Nugget forever. I think that's something
Yeah, for
that a lot
sure.
of players don't say lightly or take lightly as a fan. I think it's
I agree.
excited. I'm excited, bro. I
It
think.
still matters,
Mm-hmm.
right? That saying still matters. So yeah, and you know, I think it's when you have a franchise player like that, you want him to say that he wants to stay with your team. So Nuggets can't complain. Like you said, you did a good job of breaking it down, but they have a couple pieces that they just have to figure out how they fit together. You know, it's a puzzle piece there, but Denver will be fine. But again, this we're staying in the West right now. But it's San Antonio, bro. Let's go over there. I think I was shocked. This was the most surprising one. Most surprising media day I saw for a couple reasons. Number one reason being that De'Aaron Fox said that he's dealing with a hamstring injury. I didn't know that he was dealing with that, but he might end up missing the season opener. For me, that's a big deal because De'Aaron Fox hasn't played with Wembanyama. I think he's played 5 games with him. You know, he's barely played with Wemby since he's arrived in San Antonio. I think the entire point of getting De'Aaron Fox was for him to be that running mate with Wemby, and if he's not going to be on the court for that, that's a problem. Wembenyama was asked about his expectations for this year, and he gave a really good answer, and he said that he was humbled from last year. The blood clot was something that he's never been through. He's never had that many doctors and people attending to his care. But he said that he was able to work a lot in the offseason. You guys may have seen some of the side quests he was on. I know it was on social media, Monk, all this other weird stuff, but stuff that, just taking some time away from the game and figuring out a way to come back stronger. I think Wembanyama is ready to go for this year. Dylan Harper was asked about his expectations as a rookie. He said that he's confident he'll be able to make an immediate impact. He's expecting to make an all-rookie team this year. I think that's what I told CJ. I was surprised with the confidence from Carter Bryant, Dylan Harper. Those guys are rookies, but clearly they're not scared of the moment. Stephon Castle was also asked about his rookie of the year, and he said that he needs to improve. And similar to Shea, that he's not too concerned about the accolades he's gotten. He wants to win an NBA championship. And so for him, focusing on how to become a better player is the most important thing. So a lot of good things out of San Antonio. I know you guys are probably waiting for the offseason file. We're not going to go through all 30 teams, but I saw a lot of good stuff from a bunch of different teams, but very surprised with San Antonio in a good way. And hopefully we get the Wembanyama's crazy season this year. I think he could be in the MVP race. We didn't have him in our top 5, but he cracks the top 5 if the Spurs are a top 5, top 6 seed easy. So we'll have to see what the Spurs can give us, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I feel like the De'Aaron Fox injury was probably the main thing that surprised everyone. I feel like that's
Oh,
something
bro.
that
I was like, what?
we didn't
I was
even
like,
know about. I
huh?
heard about it from watching numbers on the board. They talked about it, and I think it's something that leading up into the season we were expecting him to be healthy and be Wemby's running
Starting.
bait running. Yeah, I feel like that's always a surprising thing. Like I said, it's the one thing about media day we figure out injuries and surgeries or whatnot that people are recovering from or are about to have surgery, whatever it may be. And like you said, Wemby, bro, I think the world is in his hands at this point, bro. I feel like it's something that
Wemby's world.
we've been talking about since he got drafted, and last season not being fully healthy. I think this season, like you said, he said it was he got humbled by it, and I think it obviously is serious injury too. It's not like he tore his ACL or whatever. It's life or death type of situation with that blood clot, and the fact that he was
Yeah.
able to take some time away from basketball, really hone in into what he's trying to do and his mental and whatnot. I feel like that's something, a side of the game that gets looked over and we don't really think of. But his mentality, I feel like it never was in question. It's just if we could stay healthy and if what they're building in San Antonio, if they could all mesh together and have that cohesive, they have that cohesion as a team that they're building. And I think it's like you mentioned with the rookies, it's something that they all have that mentality. They all are. It's I feel like it with Carter Bryant and the Dylan Harpers of the world. I think it's they're building for that future, and I think they're in a perfect spot. And what they got building. I mean, I've been saying it, been telling Los, been telling you, been telling the audience about it since they drafted Wemby. It's just a matter of time, and I think this is their time. Hopefully, De'Aaron Fox, can recover in a timely manner and get to where they need to be. But even that being said, I think with the guys they got already on that roster and Wemby being healthy, there's no reason to really count them out any game. And I think it's
Not at all.
something to look forward to, bro. So super excited, bro. Glad we were able to chop it up about the media days, and like you said, not talking
Yeah.
about all of them, just kind of took what we thought
The
was
ones
most
that were
interesting.
very, yeah.
But yeah, no, man, I'm excited, bro. It just
Yeah.
gets me ready for this
And
season.
again, I saw the Wizards. Trey Johnson said some good stuff. I think Alex Sarr had some interesting answers as well. There was a couple other teams that had pretty interesting media days. But yeah, if you have an opportunity to go through it, we didn't talk about the Hawks. Trey Young said some things about his extension. He got a question. Did he feel like it was a bad sign that he didn't sign the extension? And he was like, no, I think I was a little bit hurt by that, but I'm focused on the now. And I had a conversation with Quinn Snyder about some of the things that I can do over this season right now to improve our team. So that's all I'm focused on. And moving forward, that's where my head's at. So if you have the opportunity, definitely take some time, go through some of the answers that these players gave the media, and you'll be able to get some more insight into what's going on behind the scenes, and hopefully this cleared some things up for you guys. So obviously we appreciate you guys listening, and hopefully we can get into this off-season file.
Yeah, yes sir, yes sir.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, for the people who don't know, man, the way that we do it on this show, we talk about all 30 teams, but we've been doing the off-season files, and we talk about the players they're building around. We give you guys three. We go into their cap and roster situation. We talk about how much they're paying dudes, their active payroll. We talk about their draft picks as well, because that's part of your balance sheet. And then we go into the strategic improvements they can make on and off their cart. So yeah, it's a pretty good exercise that we do. Today we're doing it over the Utah Jazz. Uh, so I'll start it right off, man. The number one player that they're building around is none other than Lowry Marketing. And I think this one's pretty easy. Recent All Star in 2023. He played just 47 games last year, so he was averaging I think 20 points per game, 6 rebounds a game. Only 2 assists, so not a ton in that department. But I will say he's their high usage forward, their primary offensive player, and honestly, he can stretch the floor very well. He can finish at the rim. He really can create his shot off the dribble or off the catch and shoot. He's one of the better catch and shoot players we have in this league. Consistently shoots 40% from deep, but he's the number one player just because of how much he commands on the offensive side of the ball. I think he makes defenses fear. I think when he came from the Bulls, he didn't have the confidence that he got. I think he played a Eurobasket over the summer, came to the Jazz, and then was a completely different player. And then we've seen him stay that player. He's the only player on this roster who's getting above $30 million too. I think he's making $46 million next year, which is, a lot of money for Lowry Markkinen. I think you could argue the 4 years, $197 million contract is could potentially be a bad contract depending on how healthy he is. But I think, for his offensive production, there's really, and the Jazz have a really, really clean balance sheet. You guys will see here a little bit later. But I think for his type of production, it's worth every penny. And so you need a type of player like this on your roster. Like I said earlier, he's their best offensive player. He's their most talented, very athletic. He just has a great skill set to build around. I think also at his size too, 7'1". I mean, the ability to stretch the floor. He's very, very skilled player. I wish the Lakers were able to get him, or something like that. I would love for my team to have a player of Larry Markkinen's caliber. I think he plays for the Jazz, so he doesn't get valuable minutes. So he's not playing in a big market. You're not going to hear a lot about him. He was an all-star, so he did get some recognition 2 years ago. But I think since he's been injured, it's been tough to hear much about what he's been doing. But he played in the Eurobasket this summer. He looked great.
Right.
So I think, I'm expecting big things from Larry Markkinen.
Yeah. No, yeah, you said it perfectly, bro. I feel like he's, one of the most intriguing players in this league because he doesn't really get the attention that he deserves, and the type of skill that he has doesn't get the eyes on him just because he's playing for the Jazz. But seeing what he can do, and right when he got to the Jazz, kind of made that impact and became a 20-point per game scorer, and what he's able to do in the Euros, I feel like that's really where it gets a lot of people's attention, because that's when he can really shine, and it puts a spotlight on him. And I think that's something that the Jazz are needing. Obviously they're not in the greatest position, but the fact that you do have a guy that you can rely on the offensive side of the ball, be consistently scoring, and at a high efficiency, it's hard to not notice that, especially when you're a fan of basketball. Even if it's he's not playing meaningful minutes all the time, he's able to get to his bucket, and he's able to get to his shot pretty much any time.
Oh
Him
yeah.
being the height that he is, and he's able to stretch the floor at a high level. It's hard to go unnoticed for us, and I think it's something that a lot of people catch on to that soon enough if they're not already. And I think it's this upcoming season, it's gonna probably be in the same boat that they were in last year. But if he could stay healthy, there's no reason why he potentially can't be an all-star type player. I think he's proven that to us already, and I think it's something that I'm excited to see his development, his further development than what he's already at. I think Utah is in a weird spot, so they're not going to be competing, but he could
Not at
potentially be
all.
putting up crazy numbers because he is their best offensive player.
Utah might be the worst team in the
I think
NBA.
they will be
Today we might be talking about the worst team in
worst
the
team
NBA, but he is going to be around for a
a
long
long time.
time. I think you did a good job of highlighting that. Like Lauri Markkanen's, I think he's probably their only untouchable, I
Hmm.
would say. And it just speaks to what he's been able to do since coming from the Bulls. And you did a good job of touching on that jump. I mean, he really should have won Most Improved Player,
Mm.
but
Yeah,
he
he
just
should have.
and I think now we're just used to how he plays.
Right.
But shout out Larry Markkinen, man. I think he's gonna have a great year this year if he can stay healthy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Going on to the next player, the rookie that they just drafted in this past draft with the number 5 pick, the one and only Ace Bailey. He's a
Ace
he's
Boogie.
he's a rising guard with two-way potential, and Utah sees him as a clear piece for their long-term backcourt base. I feel like the thing with him is his consistency on the offense side of the ball. We know he's
Yeah,
one of the better scorers in this past draft, but I think with him it's the amount of shots he's going to put up. He's a volume scorer. He's going to be getting a lot of contested jump shots in the league. Obviously, he's going to have to adapt to that. But with his skill set, it's going to be, he could be averaging like 12 points per game, 15 points per game. Might not be the most efficient, but I think that's with him. It's something that, as for the Jazz, you kind of the growing pains of having a rookie and
you
a
got to
player
take
of
that.
his capability. I think with him, it's just making sure he gets that playing time and his maturing on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's his main thing. Playing at Rutgers, it wasn't really expected to play a crazy amount of
Any
defense,
defense.
and it's just on him and Dylan Harper going crazy on the offensive side of the ball. I think that's something that he's gonna have to work on specifically in be coming into the league and playing for the team that he's at. They don't really have that great a defense as well, but him
Not at
and him
all.
and Lowry, it's kind of an intriguing offensive combo that they got because Lowry can stretch the floor. They both can really score at all three levels. I think that's going to
For
be something
sure.
interesting to see him develop his game a lot more. And I think it's he needs to find a way to make an immediate impact on this roster. With him being averaging 17.6 points per game at Rutgers, that he could get to a bucket. It's just going to be how, for me,
Yeah.
it's going to be how efficient he can be. Because, it's
Yeah.
not,
I love that.
pretty seeing, yeah, he might score 20 some games, but it's probably going to be on like 24 shots. So it's something that,
For
for
sure.
us at 3 man, it's seeing him mature and take those shots because that's what's got you here, but also kind of don't just force them all the time. You're gonna have to play through the
I love that,
offense and
man.
get to your spots that you're comfortable and just try to get more acclimated to the league. I feel like it's something that we always talk about with rookies and something for him that he's going to have to experience. I mean, it's just
Exactly.
you're gonna have to go through the growing pains of the league and how long the season is. Going from playing 30 games in a season to you're doubling that and then some whenever you get to the playoffs. It's gonna be
Yeah, bro.
his growing pains. I feel like it's something that Utah Jazz fans are gonna have to go through, and even for us as viewers of the game, because we know the type of player on the offensive side of the ball he can be, and like I said, probably one of the best shot makers we had in this past draft, and going to Utah it isn't the greatest. We know that whole situation he was going through, pre-draft, and he doesn't want to play with Utah and this and that. So I think him being here, he just signed that 4-year, $41 million contract, that rookie contract after he was drafted, and I think they're moving in the right direction, man. Obviously, trying to focus more on the offensive side of the ball and figuring out who is the players that they're going to be building around. I think Ace Bailey is clearly the second player that they're doing that.
Yeah, bro, you did a great job of explaining that. I don't have too much to add. I think for me, what it is, the thing that I want to see most out of Ace Bailey is his ability to create for others.
Mm.
He might be afraid to pass the ball. He might be one of these people who's got a cancer to that. And I would challenge him to not be afraid to look for the extra man. We know the attention that he's going to attract on defense. He's probably going to make an all-rookie team, regardless of consistency and efficiency, right?
Yep.
Like, let's say I think he's going to be very hot and cold.
Yep.
He's going to have a stretch of games where he's averaging 20, then a stretch of games where he's averaging 8.
Mm-hmm.
So, like CJ
Yeah.
said,
No,
you
yeah,
just have to
definitely.
be willing to take the punches
Yeah.
and roll with it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't know how you felt about putting Ace Bailey here, but I think you agreed.
Oh, I
I
agree
mean, clearly, I
100%.
was, I didn't know if that's really how it was, but I'm assuming that's how it is in their building right now.
Yeah.
Just building around those two players, Lowry Markkanen and Ace Bailey. You did a good job of explaining how they're similar but different players, so they'll be able to work together. You can play them in a lineup together. So it's going to be very interesting, very intrigued to see what Ace Bailey can do. And at 4 years, 41 million, you own his bird rights. You're on a rookie contract. There again, the contract, he's probably going to outplay his contract most likely. So you're putting him in a position to succeed. We know he's going to get a ton of shots. And yeah, I think a peak season for Ace Bailey is 15 points on 42% from the field, 33% from three, and he makes an all-rookie team. If he can do that, we can build on that.
Yeah.
So I think he did a good job of explaining his situation and the pre-draft situation as well. And just I think he's in a good spot, though, bro. I think Utah had to risk taking him here, and I think he was the best available, so you can't complain with that.
Yeah, and I think just where they're at as well, they don't really have a choice. I feel like they kind of do got to deal with the inconsistency that he may have this upcoming season. But you're like we said, probably the worst team in the league. Just build off of this. Hopefully he's going to get better. I'm not even questioning that. It's just growing pains of being in the league. But I think with them, they don't really have. They're not championship contenders. They're not really playoff contenders. No. So there's no reason for them to really harp on him and grill him throughout the season for doing that, because I think it's just going to help him become a better player and hopefully be a key contributor to their future and winning games in the upcoming season. So I definitely agree, bro. I mean, there's not really much anyone else that besides this next guy,
of course,
but that
I
would take over Ace Bailey.
Yeah, like you're saying, the Jazz have a decent. They have some people to build around. I think this next dude, like you said, perfect transition, but none other than Walker Kessler, man. I mean, he remains Utah's interior anchor. We've seen him, make an all-rookie team, prove that he can contribute. We've seen him average. I think he's averaging almost 3 blocks for his career. So, very consistent shot blocker, one of the best defensive players that they have on this roster. And I think, he's still on his rookie deal, so he has that cap hit of just $5 million. He's already established himself as being one of the league's most elite shot blockers, and players don't shoot a good percentage around him. You touched on this a little bit, but the Jazz's defense is horrible. Mm-hmm. So I think having him as a back line of defense gives them a little bit of comfort knowing that, guys are going to let guys go by, but we got Walker Kessler down there. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's just the offensive growth. What can he do in the pick and roll game? Can he be a lob threat? I think if he can improve on his scoring, he's already outplayed his contract, 100%. But he's significantly, improved his value in terms of what people think around him in the NBA. And I think the Jazz view him as a long-term building block more so than Keontae George, an undersized and skinny guard. Mm-hmm. I think Ace Bailey and Markkanen dominate the forward positions. We know how valuable forward spots are in the NBA, but we've spoke about this too. The center spot is valuable now too as well. And Walker Kessler is one of the better centers that we have in this league. So I think Utah has done a really good job of keeping him on their team. That's another person they could have traded and let probably walk for a first round pick in 6 years or something like that. But they decided not to do that because they view him as a long-term building block. So just seeing what he's done on the defensive end for me is like the highlight of his play style. Mm-hmm. But the offensive production can improve and should improve, especially as they continue to tank and play for the draft lottery. They want to get AJ DeBansta here. You just said it, but they're probably the worst team in the NBA. So they're not playing for a championship or for a playoff spot. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to work on his post-up game or work on the pick and roll game with Lowry Markkanen or with Keontae George, a smaller guard who can score. So we'll have to see. I know you like Walker Kessler, but I think these three guys, man, are it's definitely a good core to have. I think it's better than the Milwaukee core.
Oh,
We were just talking about them on this podcast, but there's a reason Giannis is frustrated, and it's like the Jazz have a better core than Milwaukee does.
yeah. No, yeah.
You know,
You said it perfectly, bro. Like Walker Kessler, I feel like has hands down outplayed his contract. He's going to be, not I wouldn't say one of the highest paid players, but he's gonna get a
he's gonna get
really
paid.
he's gonna get a healthy
Yeah,
contract, bro. Because we brought you brought it up. The center position is slowly coming back to relevance, and it's one of those most important positions on your team. Being able to lock down the paint, I feel like he's done a great job of that. Being a shot blocker, being able to get boards. You said it, bro. I think my only thing for him to work on or improve is that offensive game. You don't need to be scoring 15, 20 points, but
yeah,
getting, 14, 13 in that range, being able to be a lob threat, I feel like that's where you open up the game for everyone else. And even if he could get just like, you don't need to be Hakeem on the block, but if you get, a good little hook shot or a little turnaround, back people down, dunk on
right.
them, whatever, I think that's something that for him to work on. If he could do that, he's going to be one of the best centers in the league if he could consistently do that and just improving off of what he already has on the defensive side, being able to, like you said, hold down the paint for them. That he is their bright spot on the defensive side, and it's something
For
that
sure.
they don't have a lot of. So like you said, him being the back line of defense, I feel like it's given me a lot of what they were, before they got rid of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Kind
Gobert.
of
Yeah,
that type of mold of being
exactly.
a defensive anchor, and it's something that the past years that we've seen with Utah, it seems like that's kind of where they like to build around, is having a lockdown center and just putting pieces around. And he's one of those type of centers that I think they could do that with. So, like you said, not going to be competing, probably going to be the worst team in the league. You're going to potentially get that number one pick, and if you're able to get AJ, this team is going to look very
It looks
interesting,
way
bro. Way
better.
better than
Yeah,
what
it
it
looks
is.
way better.
So,
Especially at this when you talk about their payroll
mm-hmm.
here in a second,
Yeah.
you guys will see like they have no
No.
worries about that.
Yeah.
It's not so. Yeah, we'll get into
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we'll get
But
into that. Going into the next segment of the show, we talk about their cap and roster situation. ZD talked about it earlier. Their active payroll right now for 2025-2026 projection is $133 million. The Jazz are about $51 million away from the first apron, and Utah is also $63 million away from the second apron. The Jazz are the cheapest team in the league, signaling their willingness to play for the NBA draft lottery. Lauri Markkanen is the only player making above $30 million for the 2025-2026 season. Their draft
yeah,
capital, the Jazz have one of the more flexible draft pick situations in the league. Between 2026 and 2032, they control their own first rounders in most years, while also holding swap rights with Cleveland 2026, 2028, an extra first from the Lakers 2027, and Suns 2031. They also own multiple incoming second rounders from teams like the Clippers, Celtics, and Pistons. The
yeah,
only outgoing obligation of note is their 2026 first round pick to Oklahoma City. Top
for the
five, top
Thunder.
eight protected, but beyond that, the Jazz maintain long term flexibility. I feel like we bring it up a lot, man. We brought it up last pod. Having your first round picks is such a huge asset to have, and it
Oh
holds
man,
you hold your you have your you hold your own destiny for your future. And I feel like with the Jazz,
exactly.
them being in the situation, like theoretically speaking, let's just say the Jazz did not own any of their first rounders or these next first
Yeah,
rounders, and they were
for
bad.
sure.
That they would be in a whole different situation. Yes, we keep bringing up they probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst. But at least they own their draft pick, and I feel like that's something that a lot of
Yeah,
teams don't really think of, especially when they're trying to
no,
make a splash and get a player of Lauri Markkanen's caliber. Trying to, okay, well we can compete a little bit, but we don't have our future picks. I feel like with them, it's being the least expensive team in the league, having your draft picks. Yeah, you might not be good now, but your future is looking so bright. It's hard to really think that y'all aren't going to make a splash with one of those picks, depending on where you land. And, I feel like that's something with the Jazz, they draft pretty well for the most part, for being
Yeah,
a smaller market team,
they
not
do.
not a, a free agency destination.
Not
They
at
have
all.
to build through their drafts. So I think it's something that, looking forward to in the future. They're in one of the better spots if you really think about it. Not
For
paying
sure.
people a ridiculous amount of money, plus owning your all your draft picks for the next 6 years, and then some. Having all those
Yeah,
swap picks. And they have a lot of second rounders and whatnot. They're in a good spot, bro. The Jazz, obviously as of right now, bad team, but future is looking good, and a lot of teams can't say that. The roles might be reversed, and a team might be good, but they don't own all their draft picks, but they're in that win now mode. The Jazz are just in their development rebuilding stage, and I think it's something that Thunder went through that a couple years ago. It's not saying they're gonna jump to that level at this point, but when you have all your assets still, it's hard to really think that y'all aren't until you prove us otherwise.
yeah, dude, and like, I think you did a good job of explaining that breaking that situation down if it was flipped on the other side. I like that perspective because the Jazz aren't in any danger of like not being able to sign. They have the most cap space in the NBA, or some of the most cap space. One max player as well. They have two more max slots if for whatever reason they fall on a diamond and they're able to sign them to multiple 200, $200 million contracts. It would be nice to pair up with Lowry Marketing, but you did a really good job of explaining the fact that they own their draft picks is the most important thing here. And I think, they know the goal here is to rebuild. I think if you're Utah, you have to be looking to play for the lottery. There's really no other reason to pretend that you're some competitive team in the Western Conference. And, we've said it multiple times, but they're probably going to be the worst team in the NBA. So the fact that they have such a clean balance sheet and they own all their picks and they're the cheapest team in the NBA, and obviously for good reason, it makes sense why, their future is so bright. And for Utah fans, hopefully this hasn't been too somber of an offseason file so far, but it does give you guys a glimpse into your future. Like CJ said, you guys hold the keys to your own destiny. And I think you'll be able to utilize that. You've hit on some draft picks. Keontae George is a great draft pick. I think Ace Bailey will end up being a good draft pick. The more top five picks that you guys have, the more opportunities you're going to have to get a good player. And I think you guys just have to stick through that strategy. So great job of breaking that down. I think this gives us a clear picture into their balance sheet. And I think Larry Markkinen is their most expensive player. It's like $46 million a year. So it's fairly cheap. That's why I said that his contract, there's nothing wrong with it, even if he is hurt or he sits out due to them wanting to tank. I think the Jazz were fined last year for that. Let's not forget. They sat Larry Markkinen. They were fined like $250,000 because they're obviously throwing games. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I think just owning their draft and being able to control their own destiny is the most important thing that I got from their cap situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir. But moving right on to the on court and off the court priorities, I think we're going to start with the on the court ones. I think this is the number one thing for me and for the Jazz to figure it out. But just figuring out the balance around marketing. We know, to maximize marketing, Utah has to figure out who can space the floor. I think they've had some issues. I think they're one of the more offensively redundant teams in the league, meaning they spam the same plays. They run five out. There's not a ton of continuity there. I think Bailey, Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, who we've yet to talk about, and then their other guards and wings can really step up, and they have to evolve as shot creators and catch and shoot threats, really, for this to work. I think Lowry Markkinen's turned himself into one of the premier players in this league, and he's really shown that he has the ability to slash very well. And the Jazz haven't been able to do a good job of putting the correct spacing around him to maximize his skill set. I think Larry Markkinen could potentially be an all NBA player if you put the right team around him. So figuring out what that looks like is really important for the Jazz. We'll talk about their defense a little bit later, but they're also bottom third in the league in offense. So when you have not very good offense paired with a not great defense, I mean, you get a really bad record, and most likely they'll be a little bit offensively challenged this year, but I would just love to see some development around Markkinen and trying to get guys more involved, letting them develop. I brought up Isaiah Collier. I think he's one of the better assisting guards we have in this league. But if he can continue to build his offensive game out, turn himself into a catch and shoot guard as well, then that's only going to benefit a player like Lowry or Ace Bailey. So that's the number one priority that they got from me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, we said it earlier, him being their best offensive player in general, offensive weapon that they got on their team. It's you have to be able to build around your best guy, and I think that's their main priority for sure. It's the players that they have, like you said, have pretty good guards for the most part. It's just figuring out how they're going to be able to mesh with Larry. I feel like these past couple seasons we've seen improvements with Isaiah Collier being able to be that facilitator that for them, and Keontae
Yeah,
George kind of being that spark plug, being able to score 30 points in a game. I think it helps them out, of course, with their future and their progression of what they got going on. And with Lowry being their best player isn't the best on the defensive side, so figuring out as well. I mean, we'll talk about that, so that's a different point. But Walker Kessler is really what I was going to bring up. If he can turn into a reliable scorer, you don't have to be scoring 20 points to do that.
yeah,
You
like you
can
said
be
earlier.
like a lob threat or being able to get just a pick and roll situations with him, Lowry and him, Collier and Kessler. They have pieces that they're trying to piece together, or the puzzles that they're trying to piece together. And I think it's just trying to figure out what that looks like. Like you said, being their offense is 5 out, give it to Larry, let him cook.
Let them
it's
cook,
it's it's
right?
it's hard to really be consistent and not really having a good flow of offense. I think that's really where they got to focus around.
You're
So
right.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
dude. Like the flow of the offense. I love how you ended that, but that's when I watch the Jazz, I see a lot of
Standing
like
around.
offensive, yeah, like standing around, offensive redundancy, same screen and rolls. There's no weak side action. There's nothing going on. So it's tough. Like you're leaving your players out to dry. Do I think they want to win games?
No.
No.
Yeah.
So like that's the thing. Like we're saying like what they can improve on the court to win games, but do the Jazz want to win games? Probably not. But that's something I could see that would really help out Larry Markkinen and just improve his skill set as a player right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Heading into the next on the court priorities that the Jazz need to focus on. Brought it up earlier, man. Player development. The Jazz must balance the season's low expectations with developing their younger players, the Ace Baileys, the Keontae George, Walker Kessler, Isaiah Collier, and Walter Clayton Jr. We haven't brought him up at all. They should be playing 20 plus minutes a game a night to ensure that they get valuable game reps. I feel like we brought it up. Don't want to keep redundancy of it, but
Yeah, like
they're
repeating.
they're
Yeah.
not gonna be a good team. So you have to be able to develop your young guys because these are your potential pieces of your future. And I think with them, I think like you said, it's they might be throwing games a lot this season. So you might as well give these guys opportunities to get those reps. I feel like, having Bailey and Walton Clayton Jr. being the rookies, we've seen what they can do on the collegiate level. It's just if it could translate to the league, and I think
Translate, yeah.
with them having the reps and getting the playing time, it's just gonna help them evolve their game and get to where they're trying to be. And I think with Keontae George and seeing what he can be, it's like he's shown us flashes. It's us getting to the consistency level, and I think that's what separates the good players from the great players in this league is how
Exactly.
consistent you can be. But you can't get that if you're not getting the opportunities. So no reason to think that they aren't going to play their young guys, but that is the second thing for us that they need to focus on is that player development.
Yeah, bro. And like, the reason that you brought that up is because it's so hard not to let go of the rope when you're losing that many games. You got to think about when you lose over 60 games, there's not a ton of there's not a ton of excitement around that building. It's tough as coaches and players to be on the same page and continue to develop guys that need to be developed. That's why, in the NFL and the NBA, you've seen teams that suck and they still struggle to develop their players, and it's because they don't have a staff that cares, because there's nothing to care about.
Right.
It's not like you're going to be competing for a championship. So I think that's why we bring that up. Player development for the Jazz is definitely really important. I think they have so many young guys on their team. A lot of them are not in their prime. You brought up Walter Clayton Jr., who we haven't talked about yet, but he's somebody who can come in and immediately be scoring 12, 13, 14 points a game, depending on how hot he gets. So if you give him the run, if you give these guys the run, I think they can make an impact. And you brought it up in Ace Bailey's, summary whenever we were talking about the players they were building around. You mentioned that he has to make an immediate impact from day one. And I think this is a step to do that, playing him a lot of minutes, letting him take a lot of shots, and seeing where that leads you, because player development is going to be important regardless of how many games you're winning or losing. And we know the Jazz won't be as competitive this year, but this kind of leads us into our next thing. They need to work on their defensive identity. And we spoke about it a little bit, but we said that they ranked bottom third in the league in offense. Well, they also ranked the bottom third in the league in defense last year. So kind of goes to show you that's why they're losing so many games. But they need to find a defensive identity. I think Will Hardy's a great coach. You've talked about Walker Kessler and what he gives you on the defensive side of the ball, but who else is going to be defensively looking to take on the challenge? I think they gave up 120 points per 100 possessions. It's 29th in the NBA in defensive rating. You can't win games like that, man. And I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer here, but like we play to win.
Yeah.
Like, I'm serious. Like, we've said it a few times, whatever, but like it's sad watching the Jazz sometimes, because I'm like, there should be way more defensive intensity. I don't like what I'm seeing, like, as a fan. Like, I can't even watch this game to enjoy it, because I see guys are going out there and they're showing poor effort and stuff like that. And that's never good from any team, regardless if you're tanking or not. You just want to see guys go out there and care. And I think they've lacked that at times. It's not Will Hardy's fault. He signed an extension. They want him to be in the building. We know Danny Ainge's son wants to have him coach the Jazz. But I think when you only have Walker Kessler as like your main defensive guy, and I think, Isaiah Collier is an intriguing piece on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's a stockier guard who would be willing to take on a defensive challenge. But yeah, when you get rid of somebody like Colin Sexton, you're going to feel that. That's somebody who was willing to take on a defensive challenge and guard the opposing players, the opposing team's best players. So I think the Jazz need to figure out how to build around having a defensive identity. Is it going to happen this year? Probably not. And for a reason, but I think when they do get around to it, it needs to start this year. They need to figure out how to improve from last season.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I feel like with defense, it's just your effort. It's hard to
Right.
really not care, because obviously you're a professional. You're getting paid millions of dollars to do this, but when you're losing games and your offense isn't clicking, it gets stuck in mud at times. It's hard to really want to have that effort on the defense side of the ball. So I think really it's just, this is going to be something, like you said, it's not going to happen this upcoming season, but through the years, it's going to be something that it's a building block that you just have to build on, and, find the right players, get some good vets in that can really teach these guys to, care about that side of the ball, because yes, we might be losing games, but if we're, not even midway, like middle of the pack,
Middle of the
like
pack.
that's kind of what they're going for. That's, you don't even
Right.
need to be the most elite defense, but if you can get to the point where you're not giving up 120 points per 100 possessions, then that is a sign, a good sign in the right direction. I think it's something, like I said, just completely off of effort. You don't need to be a lockdown offender, but just make sure your rotations are good, and it's a side of the ball that is really like all not even skill, because I feel like with offense you have to be certain caliber. Oh, you're able to dribble, you're 7 feet tall, you're able to shoot over
Right,
people.
because the cylinder is only so big,
Exactly.
on the
Like
hoop.
it's something that it's gonna take time, but you have to make those moves and get the right players and staff around to kind of buy into that, because it's not
Buy
something
into
that
that.
just
Yep.
happens overnight. You have to be
Not
able
at
to
all.
get those repetitions of what are we going to look like in these type of sets. And I think it's something with them, like you said, being bottom third in both offense and defense. It's not really something you have hold your head high on, but you have to
No,
improve.
not at
And I
all.
think that's something that really with the whole team franchise in general, they have to slowly make moves in the right direction. And I think it's
Collectively do it.
it's
Yeah.
it's something that they got to prioritize, because if you're giving up a whole bunch of points and you're not scoring, obviously you're going to lose the game. And I think it's something that they got to really buy in on that, because it's like I said, it's all effort, bro. I think it's hard to really care about it whenever you're getting blown out every game, but you have to in order to be a contender in this league. But yes, sir. I
Indeed, bro.
going
Yeah. No, I agree.
going on to their off court priority. They're the last thing that we think they got to work on. We brought it up earlier. Building through the draft. They have all those draft picks. They until 2032. They are not a free agent destination, so they have to find a way to be able to find great talent through upcoming drafts, which we're in a great spot in basketball. It's going to be there, but you have to just be able to, they're going to be losing games. They're going to be able to potentially be in the top 5 range for the foreseeable future, but it's also the player development that they got to be able to prove to us with this upcoming season with their young guys. If they're able to do that, then this upcoming years of the NBA draft that they got coming up that's going to be where they're going to be able to build their team. And I think it's something that with a small market, it sucks when you're bad and people don't want to play for you, because it leaves you no other situation than to build through the draft. So that's
Yeah,
our off
bro.
card priorities for us. And I think it's a good spot for them to be in, like you said.
Yeah. Like they don't have a ton to do off the court. Their balance sheet is clean. They have the cheapest team in the NBA. They're not a free agency destination. They're not going to be able to get a Kevin Durant, right? Like he's not going to Utah. So you need to build through the draft, and they've done a good job of taking care of their war chest of draft picks. In fact, they're owed some second round picks, and I think to add on top of that, they need to find value in the second round.
Yes,
At the end of the day, a lot of teams, yeah, we can build through the draft. Your first round pick's going to be awesome, but can you get me a player that could be a starter on a championship contender in the second round?
yeah,
Because that's what separates all of these teams from each other. It's not like your first round, like CJ just said it, like your first round pick's probably going to hit.
yeah.
Basketball's getting pretty damn good now. Like it's pretty hard to not have a decent draft pick in the top 5, but it's more so like can the Jazz find value on the margins in the draft? Because they have the cap space, but guys aren't probably going to want to go there. They can re-sign their players, which is, again, a thing that we'll have on their offseason file as these extensions come up.
Mm-hmm.
Their rookie deals they're still on the rookie deals, so they're not expiring, but when they come up, we'll make it a priority. But right now, yeah, building to the draft is the number one thing this team should be doing, and the only thing they need to be focused on off the court, really. I think their roster is it's so bare right now. It still needs to be built. It's clearly incomplete, and so I can't fault the Jazz for it. I think if you're a Jazz fan, you should be satisfied with how they've handled their off the court and their draft situation, and the product on the court. We just gave you guys some reasons of how it could change and improve, but hopefully it does. But until then, Utah will be at the bottom of the NBA, and we wish them nothing but the best. Hopefully they can get AJ DeBance there or something.
Yeah. That's what I'm pretty sure that's what they're betting on too, bro.
Well, yeah,
That's
that's what they're hoping for. For sure.
yes,
For
sir.
sure. For sure.
Was that
Yeah, brother.
and
But do
it?
you have anything else you wanted to add to the off season fire? Or are you good?
I think we're good, man. I think that was good. This was a little more of a sad, cloud over Utah just for the
Cloudy
situation
one,
that
yeah.
they're in. But like we said, I think with their future, having all your draft picks being in a good spot with your, financial situation, it y'all are in a decent spot. It's just you have to build, like we said, build through the draft. You get hit on those second rounders. That was a great point. I feel like that's really what's going to separate them to see if they can really be contending in the foreseeable future is, getting those valuable picks when, you have an abundance of them. And I think it's something where a lot of teams, that's where they end up finding those hidden gems in a draft. And yeah, that's all I gotta say, bro. I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Utah is they have a bright future, bro. So as we talk, we do these off-season files more. They're the 29th team that we have. We only have the Wizards left, so it'll be a similar off-season file. But
Mhm.
as those teams in the bottom half of the league continue to progress, the tone will change. We'll see them make those improvements, and their roster will improve. And I'm excited for Utah, man. This was a good exercise. Obviously, media day took up a chunk of the first half of the episode, but I think going through the Jazz's offseason file has been the most fun for me. So I can't complain. I'm just ready for the season. It's almost
It's
here.
almost
It's
here.
almost here, man.
Yeah, can't wait, man.
Yes,
We've been
sir.
talking about it since the season ended, and it's about to start again, bro. It's the best time of year for us. So, was there anything else you want to say before we head out of here, bro?
Nah, man. Just go LA Lake Show. Hopefully LeBron is still Laker for this season, and whenever he chooses to leave, he chooses to leave. But hopefully that's not now. I don't want my guy to leave.
Right, right, right. I got you, man. And Thunder back to back, baby. Come on, that's what we're striving for. That's what we're hoping for.
Bro,
I think I like the way we're looking, bro. I can't complain. Like I said earlier, people ask me, is Thunder gonna go back to back? And I brought it up earlier. I have no reason to think otherwise at this point. We gotta see what it looks like on the court. We gotta see how the landscape of the league is looking. But I like our chances, bro. But
like the chances, bro.
if y'all liked and enjoyed this episode 3 Man Weave, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time, man. Peace. 3 Man, three
Peace.
man,
Three
three man,
man,
three
three
man.
man.